Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of The Mindful CEO. I'm your co-host, Chris Angell, here with your host, Aaron Hendon.
Hey, what's up? Oh, am I the host and you're the co-host?
I
I
don't
always
know.
thought we were
That just came out today. Do you like that?
Fine. I think we're both co-hosts.
You're like,
I'm not ready. I'm not taking the mantle.
I'm Tweedledee. This is Tweedledum, and off we go.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to
All
me.
right. Well,
Talk to me about the elements of mindfulness.
I was just thinking about, all right, what does mindfulness mean? What is we say the mindful CEO, but what does that mean? And I think there are definitions, I mean, as I'm working with this organization to be certified as a mindfulness instructor, they have a definition, which I'm not present to all the words, but it's, bringing loving, kind, gentle attention. And I'm not getting it exactly right. And the thing is, what I was just dealing with is that I don't really have an interest in getting it exactly right. I don't necessarily see the advantage or the benefit of nailing it down in terms of a definition. And maybe there is, and anyone can come at me if they want to about that. I'm more interested in, what fits under the umbrella of mindfulness, or what are the facets of mindfulness, or what's included or what's pointed to when we say mindfulness. Where does that lead us? And I'm more interested in that looseness. I think, first of all, that looseness is part of mindfulness, is the open awareness. When we do open awareness meditations, and when we just are present to it all and noticing it all. Yeah. And I think there's something that lends itself to mindfulness when we say that. And I bristle it. I just generally bristle at rigor anyway. So
at rigor?
Yeah, rigor. I don't.
Wait, how so? Rigor in what?
I just don't, again, we're going to go back to my favorite metaphor. I was listening to an interview with Jerry Garcia, and he was saying that he got lucky because he's playing in a group of a band that where nobody has any interest in playing the song the same way twice. There's no possible way for them to ever play. A lot of bands play the album version of stuff, and or at least the same version over, and they're zero interest in doing it. So that kind of rigor, that kind of looseness, that kind of exploration, let's see where this conversation goes today. Let's see what mindfulness, as opposed to it's got these boundaries, and if it's outside that boundary, then it can't be in, and it's out. And I prefer the let's see where it goes, the purple crayon phenomenon.
The Herald and the purple crayon phenomenon.
That's just let's see where it goes. So
I love that.
So if we're going to include, if we're going to look for elements or threads to include in mindfulness of what we're speaking to when we're talking about mindfulness, or what we're looking for or looking from when we talk about mindfulness, I think the elements that show up are loving kindness, right? For sure, loving kindness, gentleness, gratitude, curiosity, wonder, all fit within the world of what it would be to be. You could say, if I was walking around in a state of wonder, or I was walking around in an authentic state of curiosity, or authentic state of loving kindness or gratitude, I would be walking around mindful. I think that's a true statement.
I love that.
And again, some people that are more educated or differently educated or have a different view of that, I'm happy to hear out why that's not actually a true statement. But I think that's, for me, when we're talking about the Mindful CEO as a community, or what we're out to, where we're coming from is some aspect of those states, those conditions.
It reminds me of the two words that are coming up are generative and emergent. That there is we're less attached or interested in what's the right answer of mindfulness? Like, oh no, mindfulness has these 12 steps. You're like,
Right.
I'm more interested in what gets generated in the conversation about mindfulness, and then what emerges because of that conversation. I think that in itself is mindfulness, right? Like practicing the allowing for what shows up in a state of mindfulness.
Yeah, I think it's right. And I think it's interesting to look at it as a world
Mm. Yeah.
In which things can show up. Being present in the moment shows up in the world of mindfulness. It shows up, there's a world of gratitude where in the present moment, or does one experience being grateful for the present moment. That's in the world of mindfulness. And it's a world that one can explore like that. Like,
yeah,
and I think that's what we're interested in here, is exploring that world of mindfulness as the CEO of our own lives, as for the captain of our ships, as we're moving, as we're moving inside what the world we're committed to moving in is a world of mindfulness, which is interesting, Chris, because actually, now that I think about it, it's we're going to get my friend Eric Holsapple on. He wrote a book, Profit with Presence, and their organization is all about mindfulness and living in the gap. I think it's called livinginthegap.com. I'll get Eric on.
Cool.
But it does, that book, Profit with Presence, is really, the intention there, I believe, was to, create a context for people giving up our Lamborghini leaners, right, as their own, as the end result, right? Which is, we use that as a proxy for people attached to how they look in the world, right? And do they have the trappings and the established conditions of success, and baller status, right? And those things don't actually, they don't show up inherently in the world of mindfulness, right? There's that poser relationship to life that doesn't show up in the world of mindfulness, but you could bring a mindful attitude toward them, towards people who are interested in that. And that's the thing that you and I have grappled with since the beginning, is our own contempt. Right. And that our own acknowledgement, my own acknowledgement of the contempt and the unaccept, because contempt does not live in the world of mindfulness. And so it shows up as a contrast.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, okay, I cannot be in the world of mindfulness and contemptuous at the same time. I can't operate from contempt and be in the world of mindfulness. Why? Because contempt is absent curiosity.
Absent loving kindness.
It's absent loving kindness. It's absent all, the key elements of what it is to be mindful. So contempt in there doesn't fit. Right. Good. And nor does, chasing anything really. Any kind of chasing doesn't, shows up as inconsistent. And I think that's a big piece of what this community is for, is so that we can create a container, as my friend Chris Angell would like to say, is a container in which those ways of being, those habits, those practices, those attitudes, those approaches to life all show up as like, whoa, that's weird. And I think the benefit of the community is that if with more and more people engaged in that, those kinds of ways of being, habits, practices, operating states, all those kinds of ways of being show up as weird, as inconsistent, as like nails on a chalkboard. Like, whoa, that you are really chasing something. Like, I would love to be able to, slow my own roll. Makes me this week. This is bad. This is not something to share in the podcast, but so I went to a Mariners game. I took a bunch of clients to a Mariners game. We had 3 rows, 40 people. It was really great. It was fabulous. Other than the Mariners blew it, but there was a point in there where people in front of me, this guy decides to come cut down the row in the middle of an at bat. All right. And I just think that's the rudest thing dude,
Right.
it's an at bat. You wait until, you don't have to. And I started to get upset about it. You can hear my
Contempt.
venom about it.
Your
And
venom.
I may or may not have had a few beers already. And
Plant medicine.
I was already completely gone with men. No, I had a few beers and I started to get really upset. I started to talk really loud about the people right in front of me, right? Which is not a good idea. And my wife had to like bring me back. She was like, stop it. You're here with clients. You do not get to be that guy. Don't. And it was just by the thinnest thread that I didn't want to shut up. I didn't feel like shutting up. I knew I was in the right. This was not an acceptable way to behave. They weren't an acceptable way to behave. My behavior was completely justified and called for. Completely justified. You walk down the aisle in the middle of an at bat, right? But I had my wife pull me back, like physically pull me back from saying something about it. And that for me is very much about the consistent with the condition of mindfulness that we'd like to create here, so that things like that show up for ourselves as inconsistent, inappropriate, counterproductive. And we can pull ourselves back from doing those things, even when they're justified, even when they're, the right thing to do, when they would be ultimately counterproductive, which that would have been, what am I going to do, get in a fight? Which is the end result of that would have been a fight. And now, which was fine because I was a row up. So I got him, but still, and I think that's the point of the community, is to have it show up, right? Have it stand out like, whoa. Now, clearly it was a very lack of mindfulness kind of. I did not approach that with curiosity, generosity, loving kindness at all. Right. And did not appreciate my wife pointing it out to me. Was not like, thank you. None of that was loving kindness. But there you go. So, but that's the space of the community that we're out to build, is one where if you're interested in creating a contrast from those ways of operating, the normal, I'm right, you're wrong, let me get through this, I've got to chase, I don't have the trappings of success, I must have the trappings of success, I must have my Lamborghini, I have to have that, all that. And you'd like to set up a contrast where you can call yourself on it. That's what we're building.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think I feel like in some ways the business world is very demanding or exacting, right? Like you need to be a baller, you need to be, you need to, like, you don't get respect unless you can flex, and so when I think about my wrestle with my contempt for that, is that on one hand, I don't want to behave that way. So I feel resentful that for someone else to take me seriously, they want me to flex. And I'm like, I don't want to flex. And that there is a space or a conversation where others who think this way can wrestle with me about, how do we be productive and valid and credible without having to do it in the trappings, as you say, the way the world tends to behave about it. Right. That to me is worth sinking my teeth into and being like, yeah, what's another way to show up in the world? And I don't think that answer is always obvious to me. I think sometimes it's a lot of second guessing myself, following my intuition and being like, this feels right. But then being like, I don't know. I think people aren't taking me seriously.
Yeah. I think obviously the ball game analogy, it's very clear. There's a very clear black and white line between, what's consistent with who I say I am and what's inconsistent. Okay. Pretty black and white line. But in the world of business, not so much. What's black and white? Where's is how many times do I call this lead before I become overbearing? Is this commission breath? How have I lost my stature? Just and even in this, there are people who have been studying mindfulness for 50 years, 40 years. They're way deeper into this than we are. People that have, when I'm starting my coaching program for realtors, there's people that do 100, 200 deals a year, right? I do my little 25 deals a year, and I make my little
Mhm.
$250,000, $300,000. I'm happy with that. I'm not doing a million sales, da da da. And so who am I?
Right.
Right. And then all those things get gray now.
Yeah.
Right. What is that? Am I, do I need the trappings to be able to do that? Did I need to be a Buddhist monk to teach about mindfulness? Did I
Right.
need to do, 5 million last year to,
Mhm.
to be able to have a coaching program? Or is that all,
Yeah.
just that chase, right? And where does one look to judge that?
Yeah.
And for oneself,
Right.
right? I mean, I think very few people from the outside ultimately care as much about any of that as we do. Our imposter syndrome,
Mm.
our lack of belief in ourselves is exponentially greater than anyone else's doubt in us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Right. But I think it's a big piece of mindfulness to be able to look at loving kindness for ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Look at loving kindness for what we're up to.
Yeah. There was one piece that came up earlier and it just popped up again for me, and I'll add it here. I love the first verse in the Tao Te Ching, right? The Tao that can be named is not the Tao.
Mhm.
I think when you're trying to, you could say like those who've been studying mindfulness for 50 years, like, and they have a method, and there's a, there's a way that it is this way. The minute you name mindfulness as only that way, it ceases to be all that mindfulness is. Like there is, that's why I like your angle here with elements, aspects, components. It's a world. Mindfulness is a world, kind of like art is a world. And inside the world of art, you have different mediums and modalities and expressions.
Yeah.
You can't confine art to a box. This is what art is. No, it's, you can't say this is what mindfulness is. And so it doesn't matter if somebody's been on a mindful path for 50 years and has their version of it distinguished to all the ways, because in my world of art, my world of mindfulness, I get the opportunity to figure out what it is for me.
Yeah. And I think that's very much what we're out to accomplish here, is that, an opening for anyone to engage.
Yeah.
Who's interested in engaging without any
Right.
need to have it be done a particular way.
Yeah. You don't need to do transcendental meditation. You don't need to do guided meditations. You don't need to do yoga. Like you could, but I love that. So that's what we're inviting you to, if you're interested in, bringing mindfulness to your business and exploring that conversation. The Mindful CEO as a mastermind community is that space.
Great.
Yeah. You can learn more at themindfulceo.com/invite. There's a video of Aaron and I describing the community there, as well as an application button. So click that button, fill it out, and we'll follow up with next steps.
Excellent.
Awesome,
I can't wait to talk next week.
I know. Me too. All right. See ya.